Oh, what's up, guys? This is Steve Larsen. This is Sales Funnel Radio. And before we cue the intro here, I just want you to know this episode for me was really special. I interview a incredible entrepreneur. Her name is Natalie Hodson. She's fantastic. I love learning and studying from her. She's going to go in and she's going to talk about some things that went on kind of crazy in her life, but how to actually leverage the crazy things inside of your life for your audience, and particularly around the subject of vulnerability. So this is how to be vulnerable without looking like you're weak, right? And for a lot of guys, that's super important. For a lot of selling in general, that's super important, right? The purpose is not to look like you're weak. So anyways, let's cue the intro here. I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you have liked this, please reach out to her and say thank you. She put some really amazing things out. Thanks guys so much, and see you on the episode.
I've spent the last 4 years learning from the most brilliant marketers today. And now I've left my 9-to-5 to take the plunge and build my $1 million business. The real question is, how will I do it without VC funding or debt, completely from scratch? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I learn, apply, and share marketing strategies to grow my online business, using only today's best internet sales funnels. My name is Steve Larsen, and welcome to Sales Funnel Radio.
What's going on, everyone? Hey, it's Steve Larsen, and I'm really excited to have you here today. I have someone, frankly, that I have been trying to get on the podcast for a very long time, and because I just think the world of her, and it's been super amazing to get to know this person. Anyways, I'm excited about it. The first time ever that I got to hear about this story, this incredible story. It was heart-wrenching for me to see not just everything that had happened, but the inspiration that it was causing in other people's lives and the way it was changing other people's lives was a huge deal. And it was fascinating for me to walk through and say and seeing, oh my gosh, like this is real. You know, this is a big deal. And I already knew that, but just to continue to watch it in application, I was like, gosh, the thousands and thousands of lives that have been changed. It's my incredible honor and privilege to have you on the show. Guys, I want to welcome to the show Natalie Hodson. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much, Stephen. That was an amazing intro.
I mean it.
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here too. I watched your stuff, and I binge listened to all your podcasts, and your advice has helped me so much. So it's like a win-win. I'm excited. You're excited. It's awesome.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. You know, do you mind? I know a lot of people may not know about you yet, and frankly, that's just a matter of time. I think everyone's going to know who you are. If they don't already. Could you tell us a little bit about your story and kind of the background? Because it's inspiring. And there's obviously funnels in there, but that's a vehicle to this whole thing. You're changing people's lives. And I'd love to, I don't know, if you'd grace my audience with that, that'd be great.
Totally. Well, there's a long version and the short version. I'll try to keep it towards the short version, but I tend to be like long-winded. So at any point, if you're like, Natalie, take it this direction,
we are all ears.
So I am in the fitness space, but I always say I accidentally fell into the fitness industry because I was a history major in school. I didn't know, one, that there even was a fitness industry, or two, that I ever wanted to be a part of it. And then after I had my son, I gained 70 pounds and I was pregnant with him. I was like way out here. He was a 10-pound baby. And
6 pounds.
Yeah, I was I was really big.
Yeah, sure.
And after I had him, I just remember feeling like it. I just remember feeling lost, kind of like I remember looking in the mirror and feeling like I just don't even recognize. I just wanted to feel like myself again, you know. And it wasn't even so much about the weight; it was about I just didn't feel like me. And so I started a blog, and just honestly, it was like an online journal, just as a way to keep me accountable with my fitness stuff. And I didn't tell a single person that I actually knew in real life because I was really embarrassed. I was like, I didn't want people to really know like what I was struggling with, the people I knew. Right. Well, this was when Pinterest very first got started about 8 years ago. And I just started sharing. I like to cook. So I started sharing healthy recipes and I started putting them on Pinterest. And honestly, like if you look at my first pins back then, they were taking with a flip phone, just like, you know, like awful photos. But luckily for me, it happened to be like now I'm, you know, people are taking gorgeous photos. But, and so I started to get a lot of traffic to my website. And so I started.
You were just kind of documenting what you were doing?
I was just documenting what I was doing, yeah, and sharing. And this was right when Facebook groups very first, like they weren't even a thing back then. And I started a Facebook group with this training program I was doing. And I started like sharing my ups and my downs. And because I felt like it was a safe space, I just was really vulnerable and like telling, the struggles of like, I got called out of the gym daycare again, or like, I just like real struggles, struggling with like all this stuff. And so I did that 12-week program, had really awesome results, got some recognition from bodybuilding.com. And then I was getting a lot of traffic to my site. So I was like, man, if I'm getting traffic, I might as well monetize it. So I got certified as a personal trainer. Wow. And started writing. I wrote a couple ebooks, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't like know how to write an ebook. I just kind of figured it out as I went.
Yeah.
And then I started recognizing, basically, like, long story short, what happened is one day I was at an event, and this girl came up to me and she's like, I love following your stuff, but I could never do what you do because I have stretched skin after I had my babies and I could never look like you. And I got really confused in the moment because I was like, what are you talking about? I have tons of stretched skin. And then I started realizing that, like, I don't share that. Like, I have all these beautiful professional photos where I stand up straight and I angle myself just right and you can't see it, right?
Right, yeah.
Postured and perfect looking. And then I started realizing, like, holy crap. In my head, I look down and I'm like, oh yeah, I have stretched skin, whatever. But no, I wasn't like showing that to anybody else. And so that night I pulled out my camera and I filmed this video, almost just saying to people, like saying what I just said and saying, look, I recognize that I've actually never showed you, like, like this is what that looks like. And I feel like now people talk about that a lot, but this was 6 years ago. Like, really nobody was talking about it. And I posted that. And I remember the first time I posted that video, my hand was like shaking, and I was I thought I was going to lose every follower I had, but I just was like, I know that if I'm struggling with this, other people are too, must be too. And I posted it and I shut my computer down and I wouldn't look at it. Cause I was like, everybody's going to hate this. And I opened it like an hour later and there were just thousands of comments. And that video went kind of viral. And then I started realizing that, like, the more I talked about things that felt scary to me or felt uncomfortable, it was actually more of like a magnet. Like, people started to feel like, whoa, she gets me, right? Like, whoa, she's talking about things that only I think in my head, but nobody's really talking about. And then what happened is it started to actually like heal broken parts of me too, because I started to realize that, like, those fears and insecurities weren't even real. It was just the story that I was telling myself. So the more I talked about my story, the less power it had over me. And so, total side note here, fast forward to like right now, because this was years ago, but I feel like I worked through all that body image stuff kind of on accident. I was being vulnerable. And it's crazy because right now, it's actually a very similar process that I'm trying to do a lot of self work on, learning to be like perfectly imperfect with the body stuff. I feel like I did that and I'm okay with it.
Perfectly
now
imperfect.
It's like,
that's cool.
Yeah. And now it's like, okay, how can I, like, I've always struggled with this idea of perfection, right? And so with relationships now, I'm trying to recognize that, like, it's okay to not be perfect in relationship, and that actually when you work through the hard stuff, or when you talk about the hard stuff, so anyways, that's where I'm at now. I skipped a big chunk in there, but
no, it's fascinating what you just said, though, because anyways, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Keep going, because there's this whole spot. I'm like, this is so cool. Anyway,
I'm taking notes and I might not have the right words for it because I'm just starting to figure it out. That's what I was talking to my friend Yada last night about. But and so anyways, I built this big audience all organically. I had about, I don't know, maybe 400,000 followers. But I wasn't really monetizing. I mean, I was selling ebooks and making actually good money, probably like right around 6 figures as a stay-at-home mom. So it was good. Like, it was awesome. And I was enjoying it. I was writing. And then I went through a divorce. And then it got really scary because I was like, all right, I don't have child support. I don't have alimony. Like, I have to figure this out.
Right.
And it just so happened, like, I swear a lot of times things fall in place when they're supposed to, or you meet people when you're supposed to.
Right.
It just so happened that, I don't know actually what happened. I don't know if my name got thrown around in a mastermind or something, but all of a sudden I got emails or phone calls from 8 different people telling me they wanted to build a funnel for me and ClickFunnels and all this stuff. And I was like, what is a funnel? Like, what is this? And so I started researching and Googling, and I kept seeing this guy, Russell Brunson. it's so embarrassing now, right? Because I know what a good, honest, genuine, hardworking guy Russell is. But honestly, at first I was like, is this a scam? Like, why are people promising me the world and like telling me they can, usually if somebody like tells you it's too good to be true, it is, right? And they're like, with that audience, you can make all this money. And I was so skeptical. But the embarrassing part is so Russell wrestled in college with my cousin. And so we live like just right down the street from each other. So we had all these mutual friends. Right. So I messaged him on Facebook and I basically I didn't say, is your company a scam? But that's basically, it was like, it was rude. And now that I know who Russell is, I'm like so embarrassed and I'm so grateful he didn't just be like, see ya, I'm never talking to you again. But, anyways, so I started finding out about ClickFunnels and then I read his .com secrets book and I was like, what? Because I had, mind you, I built this big audience, but never in my life had I even spent a dime on Facebook ads. So I started reading his book and I was like, what? I was like, these are real secrets. Why is he sharing this? Yeah. And so I pulled out, in fact, I didn't mean to do this. Look, this is my original notepad.
What?
That's crazy. I was just organizing my office and it happened to be sitting here. Okay. So what I did, this is cool. So I just pulled out this notepad and as I went through the book, I started saying like, how can I apply that to my business, right? Like 5 variables of successful campaigns. Step 1, who are your competitors? And I started writing down like, who are my actual competitors? This is cool. Blast from the past.
Cool. It's funny. I just found mine the other day.
No way.
Yeah, that's right over here. The exact same thing. I can't remember. I was just showing it to somebody else, but yeah, I found mine. It's like going way back. Like I remember the first time I realized this. This is a huge deal.
Well, and I was like, I was mind blown, and I was like, what? And so I started implementing it, and I was like, this works. And so then I ended up I brought somebody on to help me with like building the funnel at the beginning. Now we've since split ways, but so we launched the funnel. So okay. Again, the story's getting very long, so we'll wrap it up. But
no, it's awesome. This is awesome. Super valuable.
So basically at that point I was like, okay, my back's against the wall. Like I need to figure out how am I going to monetize what I have here. So what I did is I looked at my Google Analytics on my website because I was like, my audience is telling me what they're interested in through my analytics, right? So I took my 5 most popular blog posts and I said, okay, I'm going to make an offer around each one of these. Wow. So the first one was this weird word called diastasis recti, right? Which is basically ab separation. So when you're pregnant, your abs can separate to make room for the baby. And then in about 2/3 of women, they don't always come back together the right way. So it can cause you to like still look pregnant, even if you're eating right or exercising. It can cause you to have like just core weakness. And the other post was this thing called pelvic floor dysfunction, which in layman's terms means like if you laugh, cough, sneeze, jump on a trampoline, exercise too hard, a lot of times women after they have babies will pee their pants a little bit.
Right.
And so it just so happened that one of my good friends from college had just gotten her PhD in this specific area. And so I reached out to her and I was like, hey, Monique, I am getting a massive amount of traffic to this blog post. Do you think we could like do something together? And that's when she told me, she's like, oh my gosh, Natalie, like the peeing your pants stuff doesn't have to happen. Like just because it's so common and it happens to so many women doesn't mean that it's normal or healthy and it can be improved. And I was really skeptical again at first. I was like, yeah, right. I was like, yeah, I've had 2 10-pound babies. I got kind of defensive, right? And I was like,
your babies were 10 pounds?
Yeah, both of them. Isn't that crazy? Gosh.
Our first 2 were 5.5.
Oh, wow.
2 little kids.
Yeah, they were, and I had them at home too with midwives. Yeah, it was crazy, so crazy, but
amazing.
And so, long story short, last year it was November of last year, so not this last November, but the November before. I talked to her. It was that first conversation, and it's funny because we have the Facebook messages still with the date. Cool. I said, "Hey, do you think we can write a program helping women?" Because she put me through the program. It totally worked, and I was like, "I know if I'm struggling with this, other women must be too." So the idea, we started talking about it on Thanksgiving. We began writing it on Christmas. We launched it January 31st. It was like a month.
Yeah.
And we launched it through ClickFunnels. And and within 4 months, we had sold $1 million of this $37 ebook.
Do the math on that, people.
Yeah.
How many people? That's crazy.
Yeah, it was really crazy. In fact, we don't sell the physical version, but this is the physical version. And it's just an ebook. I mean, there's nothing super fancy about it. It's kind of text. Parts of it are kind of textbooky. Yeah. So basically, I partnered with the doctor to write that, and I'm glad I did, because she has the credibility and I have the connection. So it's kind of like a 1-2 punch.
I love that. Yeah.
Because I don't think I could have created that program 100% on my own, because, when you're talking about the body and anatomy, I mean, there's so many things that I wasn't qualified to really talk about. But anyways, so then it was this whirlwind of like, holy crap, like, it was just, before that, it was just me in front of my computer, like, answering emails. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we have this big company and this big machine, and I need to learn how to hire people and scale and be a CEO of a company instead of just like a little solopreneur. And last year was a real whirlwind of a year. And I had to learn how to be tough with business and the value and importance of contracts and not let people take advantage of you. And then, continuing like to grow and scale and create a value. I mean, just everything. It was, conceptually I knew what I needed to do, but then applying it was like this kind of whirlwind. And I still feel like constantly we'll always be working on our businesses. But so that was the world's longest answer to how you got started. But that's basically, how I got involved in the ClickFunnels community. And, the one thing I will say is, if anybody is watching this and skeptical, I understand, because I was that exact same way. But like, if you actually just do what Stephen teaches, what Russell teaches, like, it actually works. It really, really works. And it's not like scammy. It's like, if you have a good product and a good message to give to the world, follow the system and don't try to change it. And like, it will work. I mean, that's all I did. I didn't do anything fancy other than I came up with the idea in the program, but like, I just did what you guys say to do, and it worked,
That's so cool. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Cause sometimes people look at I had a buddy who looked at it once and he's like, that looks like it's scammy, same kind of thing. Like, no, you actually end up delivering more value than if you don't do it this way.
Yes. 100% agreed. So
very fascinating.
Yeah.
So you gave a speech at Funnel Hacking Live, which was incredible. And I was so excited to be like sitting, like, I think if we were sitting in the front row or something like that, and I was pumped. I was like, yeah, Natalie's next. And you gave a speech about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And you talked about some of the ways you build in ways to be vulnerable. And this isn't weakness.
Yeah.
Right. But how do you find the strength to be, I guess, first of all, could you just tell us what it means to be vulnerable? Right. I mean, because you're such an, I don't know if you want to call it vulnerability secrets, vulnerability expert hacks, whatever. Like, but you're really good at doing this in a way that doesn't come across, like, it seems like most people are like, I'm not gonna be vulnerable because it means I'm weak. I'm positioning myself away. And anyway,
right.
It's not true.
No, it's not. And I get that, because I felt that way for a long, long time. So first off, I think a lot of times, especially if you're talking to guys, a lot of the time guys will hear the word vulnerable and they'll be like, I'm a man, I am not vulnerable. Right. And I get that. But so another way of saying be vulnerable is just be real, right? Look at like Russell, he shares the ups and the downs. And because he shares the downs, you want to champion and root for him on the ups, as opposed to somebody who's only sharing the good times. Yeah. It's almost like we naturally, as humans, have a tendency to, like, if you think somebody is only always doing good, it's harder to want to cheer for them and root for them, and
cards are always in that guy's favor. Are you kidding?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think when it comes to being vulnerable, like, it's not about crying all the time. And it's not even about being vulnerable all the time. Like, if you look at my content, 80 to 90% of it is just really good quality content. Mm-hmm. And then occasionally I'll put some real honest truth or honest raw moments in what I share. And then what it does is it brings, like, this isn't my phrase, an author named Brene Brown, her books changed my life. In fact, I wonder, no, I don't have it here, but Daring Greatly and Rising Strong literally, personally and professionally changed my life. And she's a shame and vulnerability researcher. And she teaches that vulnerability is the ultimate human connector, because what happens is, when you, like, vulnerability and shame cannot survive together. And so the more vulnerable you are, the less shame can survive, and the less power that story has over you. And so, we all have moments that, like, we feel embarrassed to talk about, or we think that people will judge us, or we feel ashamed. And what's crazy that I found is that the more you talk about the hard stuff, one, the less shame you feel talking about it, and you start to feel more comfortable with it. And two, people start to open up to you and say, oh my gosh, me too. Like, I didn't think anybody experienced that. And so what happens is it creates a different level of trust with your audience. And, now, and I didn't start it, like, there's a fine line between being vulnerable to get sales and actually being vulnerable, right? And that's kind of hard to teach. And so, I didn't start this off saying, I'm going to be vulnerable so I can build a big audience and make all this money. It was like, I actually genuinely have a heart to help people. And selfishly, it helped me along the way too, because like I said, it made me feel less insecure about these things. And, so, people always say though, like, okay, I get it in theory, right? It makes sense to be vulnerable, but how do you actually do that without coming across as like that crazy person on Facebook that puts all their drama there?
Always trying, like, oh crap, unfollow, or at least mute.
Yeah, and you're just like, popcorn, like, let's watch their drama unfold, And so I kind of have this 4-step system that I didn't mean to create. It's just how I naturally write, but it works really well. And the first thing that I do is, one, remember that you don't always have to share your vulnerable moments like in the moment, right? So if you haven't worked through something and you're still feeling very fragile about it, it's okay to wait to share, because I've made that mistake before. And if you get criticism back, if you haven't really worked through it yet, that criticism can be shattering to like your confidence or whatever. And so one of my tricks that I have, so for a long time I struggled because I was like, well, when you're going through the like when you're really sad or excited or happy or embarrassed or feeling ashamed, like when you're in the moment, the feelings feel very real. But sometimes it's hard later to sit in front of your computer and remember like the real emotion that you felt during that moment. And so one of the things that I do now, a trick that I have, is I'll pull out my phone and I'll pull up the notes section on my phone. And when I'm like in that moment where I'm feeling, small or hurt or scared or whatever the feeling is, right? It can be good or bad. And I'll just shorthand write the very raw feelings, not like full paragraphs, but that way I have this big catalog of like, okay, I want to tell a story that relates to this, that relates to body image, or that relates to whatever. And I have all these, I'm not faking vulnerability. It's my real stuff. It's my real moments that I can then pull from, and then I can turn into actual stories. Right. And it's actually another way that I've learned. So a little like a family joke is that I'm really bad at analogies, and my family calls them Natalies, because a lot of times, like, and that's the whole like crux of Expert Secrets, is you have to be able to do epiphany bridges and analogies, and like my analogies just do not make sense half of the time. Like I'll say them and people are like, that didn't really make sense. And so I'm just not good at them. And I hope someday maybe I can learn to be better at analogies. So what I try to do instead is just pull on these stories that I have and then like kind of weave it together. And instead of like, it's kind of like, because it's kind of likes never actually makes sense. But so going back to so that's like my trick. And then the other thing is that I do is I start my post with like, how Russell talks about in soap opera sequences to start with the drama, right? To start with the most dramatic thing, and then you can tell the backstory. Right. And in my post, a lot of times I do that. I start with like the hurt, the pain, whatever you're feeling, the raw moment, start with that. Because then people will automatically be like, whoa, like she's talking about something nobody talks about. Exactly. Yeah. And then what I do is and this is just my style. Everybody will find their own style. But my step number 2 is I then like show myself some grace, right? Remind myself perfectly imperfect. It's okay. Or, like just show yourself some grace, and in some words, like type that out. And then the third step is try to remind myself of a time when this has happened before and I worked through it, or when somebody else has gone through something like this and worked through it. Right. And then the fourth step is I always finish up on a positive note. So like either how I worked through it, if this is a past experience, or even if I don't know how to work through it, what my plan is to try to work through it, even if you fail trying, right? So what it does is it puts people like when you start with the raw stuff, it makes people feel like, whoa, like that could be me because I felt that exact same way. And then you're giving yourself grace. You're teaching other people how to give themselves grace if they're in the same shoes. And then when you talk about how you work through it, it's like somebody else could look at your situation and say, whoa, I'm in that situation too. And if she can work through it, I probably can too. And so I think that's why a lot of my content has gone really viral, is because I make it relatable by sharing. It's not fake. They're the real moments. And then I come up with like a positive, and it's not.
End with hope at the end. Like,
it ends with hope. Yeah. But it's not like talking down to somebody. It's not like you have to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm so perfect on my high horse here. It's more like, we're in this together. We're all in the arena and we've all fallen down. Like, let's dust off our knees. And this is how I'm going to try to stand up, and I might get knocked back again, but like, this is what I'm trying. And I don't know if that makes sense at all, but I think that's why, there's an underlying subtleness of talking down to somebody, and then also being on the same playing field, but like championing everybody to come up together. And I don't know if I have the language to like always describe how I do it, but that's kind of the feeling behind it, is like, I never ever, I have written and deleted because I'm like, this feels like I know everything, or I'm like talking down, and I never want that to come across that way.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what reminded me of is, so like, we always tell people, like, start publishing before you have a big following, so that you can bring them with you and you become the expert in front of them, rather than become an expert and then start publishing, because it's so less believable. But you've done the same thing with like the vulnerability, which is very fascinating. Like, start it. Like, don't be afraid to talk about the low moments. Not that it always needs to be low, and probably shouldn't always be like, but being open about what's actually going on and doing it in front of them rises everyone together. That's fascinating.
Well, and what's crazy is that it never gets it. Well, it's always a process, right? So what's weird is that 8 years ago, for me to talk about the body image stuff, it was so hard for me, because that's where I was. I was in that phase of my life where I was really struggling with that, right? And so I did the work, and I went through the process unintentionally. I didn't know I was doing the work at the time. I was just whatever. I was being vulnerable, I was sharing. And so what's cool is that fast forward to now, I don't really have all of those like body image insecurities that I had then. And I think it's honestly because I've really, like, I was willing to talk about it in the moment. So interestingly enough, now fast forward to like today, and what I'm constantly struggling with is, gosh, my issues that I'm struggling with are different. I'm a different person than I was 8 years ago, right? So what I built my audience with, talking about the body image stuff, now it's like, okay, I don't feel like I have to talk about that as much, because I've not grown past it. That's not the right word, but like, it's not my main focus anymore. Sure. But now it's like, okay, I went through a divorce, and they haven't really talked about that very much publicly. But now it's like, okay, now I'm sitting in this moment where it's like, I'm at a crossroads where am I going to do what has worked for me in the past and be vulnerable and open up and share these things that feel uncomfortable to me again, right? It's not the body image stuff anymore. Now it's personal development and like relationships. Or am I going to get uncomfortable and talk about the struggles that I've had with my business too? Like, it just is always changing. So like, vulnerability is never like you just learn how to be vulnerable and you got it. Like, it's always easy. It is easier for me to be vulnerable in the body image stuff, but now it's like shifted to, okay, now how can I grow? And the only like hope I have is that I know that it worked with the body stuff. So like, I'm hoping that 5 years down the road, I can look back and say, okay, I was scared to be vulnerable and I was scared to talk about these things, but it got me into this confident, comfortable zone because I shared,
No, totally. Like, I went through a lot of the exact same, it's funny because I feel like it's the emotion that binds people. While I haven't gone through divorce, there's other times where I felt really vulnerable as well. And so whilst that person may not have gone through divorce, or that person, if we didn't have the same experiences, we did have the same emotions, and being able to expose the emotion, I feel like, is what binds people. And I just think it's interesting what you said. Anyway, the little quirks that you have, or the little vulnerabilities you have, like, that is your superpower. That's the reason people follow you. They don't follow you because of pure perfection 24/7. That actually annoys people after a while. But you actually get personal healing along the way. Like that's so amazing. Could you tell us a little bit, like, I mean, this is Sales Funnel Radio, and you're talking about your sales funnel. Like, what does this have to do with sales funnels? Why does it matter? Because it totally does, but just for everyone else, you know.
Well, it 100% matters, because like the thing that I've learned is that I am not the best trainer in the world. Like, I will be the first to admit that. Yes, I'm a personal trainer, but like, people don't buy my programs because, I mean, like there's probably better people that can talk science better than I can, right? I stumble over my words. I have like mild dyslexia, and I mix up like scientific terms all the time. And, but the reason people follow me and the reason people buy my programs, the reason we were able to sell so many of this book is because of the connection, is because, so I have this video. So I owned a company called Dollar Workout Club a couple years ago, and we would film our workouts, and we never cut the cameras, and we would always be joking and be like, guys, if you're at home, like you can relate to the doorbell ringing or whatever. Right. And it was very relatable. Well,
yeah.
One of the workouts, I happened to be wearing gray shorts, and Drew, the only like other trainer, wrote the workout, and it was all jumping exercises. Right. So we're doing the jumping, and I'm like, oh crap. I could tell I was like peeing my pants a little bit. Right. And so like, it's so in the moment, it was like, it was like it was so embarrassing, right? Because I'm wearing gray shorts, and at the beginning it's like, and I have the video, we've time lapsed it where you can see like this little tiny spot, and then by the end, I mean, my whole butt was just, it was so gross. It was just like covered in pee. And we cut on our B-roll, and I'm like at the end, I'm trying to stretch and like turn sideways so you like can't see. And anyways, I could have ran and hide and never shared that, which I didn't for a while. I was really embarrassed about it, but we had that footage. So then when I went to go create this program, I could take screenshots from that video. I could take the actual video and put it in my funnel. And so what happened is people all of a sudden were like, whoa, this woman actually peed her pants, right? Like, this is embarrassing. I mean, truth be told, this program almost didn't come out because I had to really have a heart-to-heart with myself and say, okay, Natalie, are you willing to tell the whole world that you used to pee your pants, you know?
Yeah.
But what happens is then you can put those real stories like in your funnel. You can put those stories in your funnel, and then what happens, you can put the photos. And it's kind of like, instead of social proof, you know how we talk a lot about your customers and your social proof, this is your real story and your real life proof that, whoa, this woman understands me and this woman gets me. Because the truth is that real change, like, I can give you the best meal plan and the best workout program in the world, but it's not going to have a lasting long-term effect until you like make that internal change, that belief in yourself. And I feel like that is my gift, is helping people see their value and their power. And so, you know,
people kind of have an identity shift with the vulnerability that you have almost. That's fascinating.
100%. And so what's, you know, the psychology behind it, I think, is that when you are willing to like be real vulnerable, not fake vulnerable, right? But if you're willing to be real vulnerable, people can relate to that. And once people relate to it, they begin to trust you. And then once they trust you, they'll buy from you. And so, you know, it's this really amazing thing that can happen that, you know, and my biggest fear is that people listen to me when I talk about this and they're like, I see dollar signs and I'm just going to like figure out how I can be vulnerable. But the truth is, people are smart. Your customers are smart, and they can smell out fake vulnerability.
Right.
And so, the biggest thing, like if you're sitting there and you're thinking there's no way I could ever talk about this, then you're on the right path. That's how you know it's real vulnerability. If you seriously feel nervous to share it and talk about it, and you think everybody will think I'm a fraud, everybody will think I am a bad parent, everybody will think I'm a bad husband or wife, like nobody's going to find me attractive, like all of these things, these stories we tell ourselves that if you start talking about it, people are going to think, guess what? That's the real good stuff that you need to be talking about and sharing with if you want to create real connection and live like a wholehearted life, you know?
Totally believe that. Because I struggled. Anyway, when you got up and you were speaking about that on stage, I was like, man, I know, I feel you. Holy crap. Because I had like zero confidence. So rather than me like choose to not be active and try and do this game, I just called out my fear publicly, and that became a theme for it. It was like, look, guys, I don't really want to be doing this, although I got something cool to show you. All right. And for a while, that was the theme of it.
Yeah.
And then as I grew up and healed, I like how you said that, past certain things in front of the audience, then it was like, whoa, I've got to wait for this new episode, or what's he doing now? And it was crazy. That was worth more than me putting hundreds of episodes out of just the best content ever.
Yeah.
It was crazy what that did. So what would you say is like, so you're telling people go ahead and start recording down things that are going on in the moment. Don't feel the pressure to go ahead and actually say it in the moment, which I totally agree with that. I don't know that I can handle that.
Well, and it can be whatever platform you like the most, right? Like mine happened to be Facebook, but some people are better at YouTube, or some people are better at podcasting or Instagram. Like there's not one I think that's better or worse. Just find what feels the easiest to you and start there.
Yeah.
I will say too, so not the only, but one of the downsides of being vulnerable is, and I don't let this scare you from being vulnerable, but it does happen. It still happens to me.
Yeah.
So when you're open and transparent about your life for some reason, and I get it, we're that way with celebrities, right? You're like, I want to know why they broke up and both sides of the story. And it's like, people feel like they know every aspect of your life. And like, so, and I do share a lot, but I don't share everything, and so then what can happen is then you can get harsh people on the internet, and we all get that anyways. But like even just last night, I get mean messages like every day pretty much from people. And luckily I have my team now kind of shield me from it just because it's like silly. But
I have to do the same. Yeah.
Yeah, just because it's hard for me to continue to be vulnerable if I'm always reading the negative messages. But this one woman was like, you are so different than you used to be. You used to share like your progress photos, and now you just talk about your life. And it's like, well, the truth is we all change and grow as people, right? And so for me, posting an ab selfie anymore, I don't get validation or fulfillment. Like I don't need that like I did 6 years ago. And so if you look at my feed, I don't post as much like body image stuff because I'm kind of like in a different space. And so what will happen is that as you're transparently sharing what you're focused on in your life, sometimes you will get people that you don't attract anymore. Like they're still in a different area and they want to follow people that are in that area, and that's okay. And like what I've had to learn is that the number one thing when you get like mean people on the internet, and it took me a long time to figure this out, is that it's so much more about them and what they're personally struggling with than it is about you,
Yeah.
And this one, so for example, my peach tree, so we had a big windstorm. I'm sure because we live in the same town, I'm sure you saw it. Yeah. So, this tree that I've like nurtured for 2 years, I finally have some fruit coming off it completely like broke the tree. And I was really sad. And I posted about it on my Insta story, and she wrote back and she was like calling me all these mean names. And she's like, and then to think that your biggest worry right now is that your peach tree died. My mom just died and my brother is sick. And I realized like, okay, she's hurting because of that and she's lashing out at me, right? So it's a reflection of her. It's not a reflection of me. And so that was the hardest thing I had to learn being open and vulnerable in the online space, is that you will get critics. I always say it's like the people in the peanut gallery out there who aren't, like, I'll listen to criticism from people who are in the arena with me, right? People who are battling and fighting and trying and working hard. But if it's just a critic out in the peanut gallery that isn't there fighting along with me, like their opinion doesn't matter. And it's probably more about them than me.
You're better than I am then. There's times I don't know.
I did block her.
Male instinct thing. I like to fight with them sometimes, and I shouldn't. And I'm growing past that. And there's me being vulnerable. I like to stir the pot sometimes when it's already brewing. But
you should talk about that, Stephen. So you should talk about it, but not just like the fun, like I said this and he said that, but like the real, like, why did that trigger you? And like, what's the story behind that insecurity, or behind? I don't know. Like those are the things that people love. Not just the story, but like go deeper into like the feeling behind it or the why behind it, and that's, I don't know.
I told you, yeah, some of it's going on right now still with some other people. It comes in waves. I don't know if that happens for you too. It's
Yes.
like the criticism goes down, whoa, and then it goes away. And you're like, everything rocks. And then you try something big again. Everyone's like, whoa.
Yep.
And not everyone, but there's anyway, the talking heads, as I call them,
Mhm.
come on out. And it's the armchair quarterbacks. Like,
100%.
yeah, I told you. And I've been planning on doing that. It's funny you say that. I just haven't quite formulated how to do it yet. So
Yeah.
it's top of mind.
Good.
Well, I want to thank you for being on here with everyone. And guys, Sales Funnel Radio, talking about vulnerability. This is everything, especially if you are the attractive character of your own business, which I hope that you are and you choose to be. This is not a tiny subject. It was something that you will not have a choice to go around. You have to. You will address this, or whether it's through haters or your own personal growth. You're gonna get it. So please go follow Natalie. Natalie, where should people go to follow you?
My website is Natalie Hodson, HODSON.com, or Facebook is Natalie Hodson Official. Instagram is Natalie Hodson 1. So
Cool.
Natalie Hodson. And if anybody has any questions, you can leave them and I'll keep checking them and we can answer them and stuff. And then the book that I talked about was Brene Brown's Daring Greatly and Rising Strong. I think that's a book every single human being on this planet should listen to. In fact, I call the book magic because I've listened to it probably 6 times now. And every time I need to hear a different piece. I gain something different from it every time, but they're good.
I wrote it down. I'm excited. I'm going to get it right after this.
Cool.
That's awesome. Everyone, guys, thank you so much. Please reach out to Natalie and say thank you and go follow her and watch her actually practice what she preaches on this stuff. It's actually fantastic, amazing, and it lets her audience open up as well. So Natalie, thank you so much for being on, and this has been a pleasure.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Woohoo! Hey, thanks for listening. Hey, many don't know that I actually made my first money online as an affiliate marketer. If you want to know how I funded my entire company without using any of my own money ever, you can learn to do the same for free at affiliateoutrage.com.